Hey guys, welcome to a new video. So one of the questions I get asked most often on this channel is where to start when you want to learn sewing. What are the best ways to begin learning how to sew? So that is what I wanted to talk about today. I have actually only been sewing myself for about a year, I think it will be around now. And actually my entire sewing journey is documented on YouTube. The very first project I made, I filmed it, so it is on here, you can go watch it. I will leave a link to my sewing playlist up in the info card up there so you can, watch if you are interested in that, how I have, progressed through that journey. So I have only been sewing myself for about a year. I still very much consider myself a beginner, but I do definitely have some advice that has been very helpful in my journey personally, and I think it would be of great help for anyone who wants to start themselves. I wrote a blog post about this topic a few months ago, but I still get asked all the time on this channel, so I wanted to put it across in a video as well. If you prefer to read it or you want to save that information for later, I will link to the blog post in the info card as well, and that's maybe a little bit of an easier way to file this information away. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. These are my top tips on learning how to sew. Tip number one is to start with quick reward projects. When you are just learning a new skill or beginning to do something you've never done before, in my personal opinion, it is so important to get a little bit of that instant gratification that will keep you excited and not kind of deter you off of learning more, because everything that's new and you're just starting out with is going to be hard. You're going to fail. You need to learn everything. You're learning a new skill. I personally find it very encouraging and important even to start small and do things that will almost be a guaranteed success, so that you actually have something to be proud of very early on in the journey. Because nothing is as discouraging as getting the feeling that this is something that is just beyond you and you're never going to grasp. And there is no need for that feeling whatsoever. So be sure to start with something that is easy, that you know is going to work, only requires the most basic of sewing skills. Projects that are often recommended as kind of beginners or first-time projects, quick reward things, are things like pillowcases, pencil cases, things like that. But personally, I feel like you should start with something that actually gets you excited and that you will love and that you will actually want to use. I myself don't really have a need for new pillowcases, so I personally started making a pinafore dress. This was my first project. I have it right here. I just got this beautiful fabric and I made this pinafore dress. Again, the project is on my channel, so if you want to know how I did this, then you can go watch that. But the thing about this project is it is made up of only rectangles, and I feel like that is a fantastic place to start. Make an entire project that is just made out of rectangles. That way you won't have to worry about, fitting stuff and darts and complicated things. You're basically only sewing together straight lines, which is pretty much the simplest thing you can do. I have a very similar project here that I made pretty recently, which I think is a great beginner's project as well. It is this apron. It's made out of linen, and again, it is just rectangles. It does have some sewing techniques that are a bit more advanced than just sewing in a straight line, but also really easy to grasp. It has some gathers around the top, and then it has some gathers around the bottom as well, but it is still only rectangles, and that is super easy to make. You don't need a pattern, you can draft this yourself, and it is something super cute, actually wearable, so you will actually have made a piece of clothing, which in my opinion is much more satisfying than a pillowcase. So there are definitely more exciting things that you could start with. So seek out something that you think you would like to make and just give it a try. The second tip, very important, is to choose the right fabric when you're just starting out. I don't know a whole lot about fabrics myself yet, because Like I mentioned, I've only just started sewing myself, but I do know that there are fabrics that are easy to work with and fabrics that are much harder to work with. So for your first couple of projects, I definitely suggest you stick to fabrics that are easy to work with in terms of technique. So you will want to go for a fabric that is made of natural material, preferably cotton or linen is what I would suggest, or maybe a blend containing cotton or linen, and go for a fabric that is woven and light to medium weight. These fabrics don't stretch, they don't fray very easily, and they aren't slippery, which takes away a whole bunch of hardships that can occur when you're sewing, and they are just very straightforward to work with, so that's a great place to start. Secondly, I would go for a fabric that is simple, preferably something with no pattern. So for example, I have this just natural linen here. Because this doesn't have a pattern and it is a woven fabric, it also doesn't really have a direction. You don't need to pay attention to things like pattern matching or, making sure everything lines up, which is, again, something pretty complicated and advanced that I haven't tried at all myself yet. But if you want to go for a pattern, then you could go for something that is small and repetitive. This maybe isn't the best choice. I know some people would definitely try and pattern match this. I personally didn't, I don't care too much. But something like a small delicate floral will be perfect to start with. Something like polka dots, just a pattern that works even when it's kind of randomly spread throughout the garment. And the third fabric tip is to go for a fabric that is inexpensive. For your first couple of projects, chances are you will have to recut some pattern pieces, you will make some mistakes, you will have to unpick seams, you might end up destroying some edges. It is best to practice on a fabric that, doesn't break the bank. Also, for your own peace of mind, I know I'm always much more nervous when I'm working with fabric that was a little bit more expensive, whereas with fabric that is less expensive, you will maybe feel more freedom to actually experiment, and that is very important, again, when you're taking your first steps into developing a new hobby. Third tip, start by altering or changing existing clothing. If making something completely from scratch is a little bit intimidating to you, which I can imagine, then try to start out by taking something you already own or something from a thrift store and just changing a couple of things, just a few little things. Hem it, bring in the waist a little bit, add some lace around the edge, just alter it a little bit to make it more to your taste. And that is a great way to help build up some sewing confidence before you get started with your first from scratch project. Another great benefit of this is that altering clothing that is already assembled and existing will give you a great feeling for how your garment construction works. So where are the seams positioned? What happens when you bring in a seam a little bit or when you give something a little bit more room? It just helps you understand the technicalities of pattern making even without actually realizing it. So it's very useful, I think, to alter existing clothing before you get started with sewing, or in the beginning steps of your journey in any case. Tip number 4 is dive into the sewing world. This is something that has helped me greatly, but there is so much sewing information out there. This is a hobby that is very popular across the world, and there is a wealth of information out there already, and there is absolutely no need for you to figure everything out on your own. Find a couple of sources online that really inspire you. Find some YouTube channels that you really identify with or that you enjoy watching. Find some blogs maybe that explain and share some patterns or things that they do, and just get inspired. But do it kind of casually, I'd say. Don't try to kind of soak up and learn everything all at once. I think it's very important, again, to keep that spark alive, keep it fun, and really just get excited about sewing, get inspired, and you'll pick up a lot of the kind of technical language as you go, just as through being exposed to it more. And I feel like that is definitely something that can help you feel more at ease in the sewing world, I guess. I personally really like following some sewing YouTubers. There are loads and loads and loads out here, but you could also, read a book about sewing or find a blog. Of course, Pinterest is a great source. But just immerse yourself in the kind of community that is surrounding this beautiful hobby, and you will notice that that can be super beneficial. Tip number 5 is to ask for help. When you run into something that you're not sure how to do, something you've never done before, or maybe you have done something and it turned out wrong, didn't turn out how you had hoped, don't be afraid to ask for help. Like I mentioned, sewing has been done pretty much since the dawn of time. Since people have been wearing clothes, they have been sewing clothes. So any problem you run into has already bin solved countless times before, and you don't have to do it all by yourself. You could go online, ask help on a forum, Google the question that you have, maybe a video will pop up. Or if you have, anyone in your kind of social network that could help, that will be very great as well. I know many people have older relatives that know how to sew, you could ask, or maybe you have a neighbor or a friend that knows how to sew. Just don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. Tip number 6 is to practice with existing designs. If you're anything like me, one of the most exciting things about sewing is getting to create your own designs. I absolutely love it, but keep in mind that designing clothes and making patterns is a completely different genre of sport, I guess, than sewing is. It is a completely different discipline, and it is its own separate craft. Trying to learn both at the same time, sewing and designing, can be a bit of a challenge, and there is absolutely no need to put that extra pressure and stress on yourself. You can learn how to sew while being guided through it step by step and ending up with a beautiful finished garment if you just follow a pattern. There are so many existing patterns out there that will just walk you through the entire process. So many patterns are labeled easy, that are great for beginners. Designing is super fun. By all means, do it if you feel like it, but don't feel like you have to. There is absolutely no shame in just following a pattern. Everyone does it. It's a great way to start. And even for more advanced sewers, patterns are amazing. And they're out there for a reason. And my last tip is to experiment and have fun. That is the most important thing in any creative hobby. Just experimenting and trying to express yourself through the creative hobby is the most fun part about it. So don't be afraid to just try things. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. In fact, expect to make mistakes and be okay with that. Learn from your mistakes, learn how to fix them. That is so valuable. I feel like the most valuable lessons are learned through, making a mistake and then fixing it. That is the absolute best way to learn any new skill, and definitely sewing as well. So my biggest tip is just start. Just start with something and go from there. You will run into things as you go and, learn from there. That's the biggest tip I can give you. Just do it, just get started and have fun with it. And that is it, guys. Those are my top tips for beginner sewers on how to get started. I didn't go into the technical side of things because I don't think that is the most important when you're really just starting. I feel like the fun and excitement is way more important than, being technical and perfect about all your seams and finishes and everything. And besides, that information is out there, brought to you in a much more concise and understandable way than I would be able to do it. So I might bring out videos like that in the future, but only when I know what I'm doing myself. I hope this video was at least encouraging for any beginning sewers. Definitely just go for it. It is so much fun. It's such a rewarding hobby. If you have any questions or any tips to share with us, then please feel free to leave a comment below. We can all talk to each other about the joys of starting to learn how to sew. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for lots more beauty and lifestyle content, and sewing, of course. If you would like to support me through Patreon or my merch store, there will be links in the description box below. Thank you so much for your support. There is another video here that I think you might also enjoy. You can go watch next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye!